The animation I made has 67 views, also has 4 likes, and I have 2 subscribers to my channel. I made few animations before, and I used couple of times the most traditional technique, the spin book. I made spin books from tracing paper, and I drew simplified line drawings one after another. The first animation I made in college, the night drive, has around 250 hand-drawn frames. The whole animation is 3 minutes and 13 seconds long. Once I have finished it, I was really proud of it, and my lecturers liked it too. It has its silliness, has many recycled parts and blackouts, but for the first attempt it isn't that bad. This time I used my own innovation of creating animation, but firstly, I have chosen a brief, the 7 Deadly Sins animation. I chosen this one only because this one was the only one which allowed me to do animation. I must say, I really did hate this topic at the beginning. 7 Deadly Sins. This is one of the most boring, overused cliché topic I could think of. But I had no choice, so I did stick to it because, in the end of the day, I could do animation, and creating an animation was the most important thing for me. After a few weeks struggle, I got some ideas where to start. I used an A5 sketchbook for the storybook because it's small, portable, so very useful. Ideas popped in my mind and I started to draw my storybook. I was sitting in a coffee shop for hours and hours and I was drawing everything I had on my mind. I have plenty of ideas. As soon as I finished with the story, I started to focus on detailed drawings. I started with the first scene of the story, but I couldn't get right the female body from that angle I wanted to show her, so I jumped to another figure and I drew slowly the gluttonous body from different angles. I was lucky because later on I got significant help from a friend who did let me take pictures about her in the pose I needed, and I could use her face as a base. I couldn't figure out how to draw a woman from that angle correctly without her. Slowly but surely I drew everything I needed to take the animation one step further. This step was the scanning stage. I scanned my drawings, then in Photoshop I used the burn tool to make lines deeper, stronger when it was needed. The following step was to open each image in Illustrator and with the image tracing tool change the texture of the drawings into smooth, paint-like texture. Then I started to cut off all the drawings one by one. The hardest part was definitely to create the frames. I did that in Photoshop. That's how the coloring was done too. I didn't add any color to my drawings. I was adding color to separate layers. The sky is several layers colored in a shade of blue. The ground is another layer, colored in red and orange. These colored layers placed on the front, at the back and between the figures. So, on the frames everything has its own layer. Let's take the first scene for example. In the first scene we see clouds floating in the background, birds flying across, a wasp stings the rose which makes the rosebud open up. For this scene, because things happen in the same time, all the movements must be ready to be animated. So everything is on screen already, everything is on the right place, which means all the stages of the bird flies, all the stages of the wasp turns up, and all the stages of the rosebud opens are ready to be shown in separate layers. I placed them in advance after I worked out how it will look when I make a frame. I made invisible all the frames I don't need for the specific frame, and I show only what I need. As the story goes on, I make visible the following stage and I make invisible the previous one. I must not forget about the floating clouds, which also must float with the same speed, which means I drag them from the right to the left with the distance of the same amount of pixels. Also, there are two different kinds of clouds. Clouds on the front, which floats quick, and clouds at the middle float slower. In my opinion, this idea gives more life to my animation. When a frame was ready, I saved it to JPEG. Each scene done by this technique. After every 30 frames, I made a test video to see how the animation looks. The hardest part of the entire animation was the part when the man arrives to the woman's vagina. The problem was the movement of the man. It looked like a puppet on strings. It took a couple of hours to get to that stage when I felt the man moves believable enough. The entire animation made of 1085 individually composed and saved frames. This is the biggest project I have done so far, I think. I'm planning to make 10 episodes altogether. Each episode will have its own unique atmosphere, style, and logo. All the episodes will connect to each other, and together they will tell the complete story.